This may venture into get off of my lawn, or when I was your age, I used to walk to school 3 miles uphill both ways territory. Mm-hmm. But let's face it, there are a lot of things that Generation Z is completely missing out on that we had when we were younger.
For sure.
We will tell you what those things are because John and Nancy are still talking. So, I grew up in the 70s, basically, 60s and 70s, and then into the 80s and 90s. Basically, the majority of my life was before the internet, or I think.
Yes, me too.
Is that the math is about right?
Yeah, for sure.
So the internet's changed everything, obviously, and, the millennials and Gen Z and all this stuff, they've grown up with it, and the world is just simply, obviously, a different place, for better and for worse, in the 21st century. But there was a thread going on the internet the other day about just people talking about these things like, you guys don't understand how great this was before the internet came along.
Or how bad. I mean, you just don't, it would be hard to go back and be like, what would that be like?
It's a little subjective, and I just thought we'd roll through some of these that people were discussing online, because it's very interesting. And I thought one of the first things that a lot of people started discussing was, let me explain to you how cool it was to not be connected all the time, right?
I actually love being connected to a lot of people.
A lot of people do, but...
I mean, there was just so much you didn't know when you weren't connected via the internet.
Very true, but one of the things that was great when you were younger, and I'll just speak for myself and from a creative sort of space, is that you didn't have all this info coming into you all the time, so you kind of had to develop your own. You had to go looking for it.
Yeah.
And those skills, I think, just not being connected and having to fill that space with your own talent led to a lot of people coming up with very original ideas. There's a lot of unoriginal material that's regenerated now because of the internet, because it's just out there, and so people kind of refer to it as their own.
Yeah. It is harder to disconnect these days because you are bombarded with information constantly from the internet, for sure. And like you just mentioned, real actual boredom, I don't think kids these days are actually ever come across being bored. So I get made fun of all the time. So my friends and I play cards, and I am a really good shuffler. I'm just going to say, I know that's not something you usually like. I'm a really good shuffler. Okay, and my adult friends are like, it's a joke. Like, why do you love to shuffle and you just like are a really good shuffler? I'm like, Sunday afternoons, I was so bored. I would take a deck of cards and go into my living room, and I would build card houses. I would build houses out of cards, and I would just shuffle, and I would play
solitaire.
Yeah. I'm like, I would just play with cards by myself.
Fascinating.
Like, so that's
but that's okay because you were filling time, right?
I was.
So I think,
and now I'm a really darn good shuffler.
Kids today are still bored, but they're bored while watching content. That's what I've noticed.
Yeah.
Like, they're bored out of their minds, but they're just flipping through stuff on the phone.
Like mindlessly,
yeah,
right?
It's boring, but they're just bored with content. Now, this is a huge deal. So we're having this conversation about just stuff from the pre-internet era that was actually really cool that kids today will never understand. Mm-hmm. Not having every screw-up you've ever made uploaded onto the internet.
Thank goodness. I mean, my college roommate was just in town. And we were like saying how thankful we are actually that there were no phones in college. No cell phones while in college.
Now your life is uploaded in real time.
Constant.
And it may not even be you recording it.
Correct.
It can be somebody else recording it. I don't know how anybody's going to get elected in the next 30 years. But, now I got into the tail end of my college generation, maybe not quite college, after college, of the VCRs, like portable VCRs. People could... they were giant. They looked like a television camera, but there were still people recording things. And there were a few of those VHS tapes out there that I'd probably like to have back, but they were never put up on the internet, right? It was a few people saw it and laughed about it, but it never was
No.
around the world in 10 seconds.
Everybody in your school district knows about it, and all the parents.
Right.
Right. You
But
know
that
what I
never
mean?
happened
right.
when we were.
No.
And
Yep.
basically, parents, you actually had a lot of unsupervised time. Kids don't understand even what that is anymore.
That was probably one of the best things.
Unsupervised
about growing up.
time.
Unsupervised time. You leave, you go and get on your bike and ride your bike. Now, the only thing is, my mom was like, if you start at one friend's house and you go to another friend's house, you got to call and let me know. But I mean, I could be out riding my bike and for hours.
Now, here's one thing that you remember fondly, but actually now we've gotten better at it. Waiting for film to get developed.
Oh, that was the worst, actually. Sorry.
So you'd take your film in to have it developed, be it a movie, an 8mm movie, or the photographs, and then when they get back, about half of them are awful.
That's what I'm saying. Like, they're just the worst photos ever.
And you feel like you've wasted your time.
So I actually disagree with that one.
No, I do too. I'm just saying I think it's much better to have digital phones everywhere. I like that.
Yeah.
And if you screw a picture up, delete.
Yeah.
Go
Now,
on.
Did you love browsing through the video rental store?
I'm going to say not so much the video rental store, but record stores. Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So when I was, one of the things that I think a lot of kids let me rewind that just a smidge. Kids now have immediate access to every song ever recorded.
Oh, for sure. As soon as
It's on
they
their
release
phone.
it, it's
on
right.
their phone. And not just the new releases, but every song ever
Well,
recorded
yeah.
is on their phone.
Yeah, of course.
When I was younger, you actually developed this relationship with music because it didn't come in all the time. You had to go get it. You had to go to a record store. You had to find it. You had
That's
to
what I'm
have
saying. When
friends.
it's first released, you're going to the record store to get your, be the first to own the album.
Tell this story. The way I sum that up is my friend Marianne McDonald. We and a couple of other kids, we used to go to her house because she always seemed to get the records first. She was just a music head and she liked to get them.
Yeah.
So Marianne would get these records and we'd go to Marianne's house and she'd put them on. And I'll never forget her saying this one time. She goes, guys, this is the future. And she put on Van Halen 1. The first time I'd ever heard Eddie Van Halen play the guitar. And I'll be damned if she wasn't right. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
that kind of excitement was really something. And so then that's a long way of getting back to the point of browsing through stores.
Yeah.
So our social center was the record store. You'd go and they'd be
Right.
playing music. You'd be hearing songs.
You'd be with your friends, just
leafing
looking
through the
through, yeah,
records.
sure.
You'd be flirting with girls. You'd be doing. It was kind of a
Yeah.
social center, and
No.
that's just changed. And that's a shame.
Yeah. I have to be honest, though. I never went to record stores. I don't think that's going to surprise you much.
No,
But it does not surprise me that you spend a lot of time in record stores.
lived there.
Yeah.
I mean, that was just the way
that's
it
really
was.
cool.
So it's a lot of this discussion on these web threats about the things that the internet generation will never really appreciate is having to do with just time. It was a slower world, and so you had to kind of communicate differently, and it wasn't immediate. And your
Like
parents
if I
weren't
text
always
my
connected.
husband right now and he doesn't text back immediately, I'm getting annoyed. But I mean, you know what I mean? You used to have to call people on a home phone.
True.
They wouldn't answer. There'd be, at one point, there were no answering machines. And then, of course, there were answering machines. But people aren't getting their messages till they get back home.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Now
It's
you
like-
better answer me in 2 seconds, or you're a
He
loser.
just ignores me when I.
And then I got one last one, and I'll mention it because I think I remember it fondly. So my family, and a lot of families around here. So my family, we used to have appointment watching around the television.
Of course,
The
absolutely.
whole family would get together and watch a show.
Mm-hmm.
I remember specifically The Wizard of Oz and The Ten Commandments. Every year,
Mm-hmm.
those movies would come on TV, and we would all sit as
Yeah.
a family. And even if you didn't like the movie, you still watched it
watched
as
it.
a family, usually with TV trays, just to say.
Mm-hmm.
But you would gather, and it would be appointment viewing to watch these shows together, and you would actually look forward to it.
Yeah.
And I'm just speaking for myself, but we don't do that anymore. I mean, everybody watches stuff immediately. There's no anticipation. If you want to watch an entire season in one afternoon, there you,
You
go.
can, right.
And it just
Yep.
it's some of that appointment stuff with the family.
You actually have to say, do not watch that show without me, or you're in big trouble. Do you guys ever wait a minute, you watch that?
yeah,
Without me?
agreed.
Yeah. No,
But
for
there's
sure.
a lot of good things about the 21st century too. But every generation thinks that their time when they were a kid was the best, right? Because that's what you remember fondly.
Or
And-
just some things were the best, not everything.
Yeah, maybe so. Well, listen, spoiler alert, we're going to be doing this again because whenever we find something new to talk about, we enjoy talking about it with you because if you keep listening,
We'll keep talking.
see you.
Bye.